I froze the moment I saw her silhouette on the porch. There she was, standing right outside my glass door, her wild yellow eyes staring straight into mine. In her mouth, dangling helplessly, was a tiny lynx cub. Its legs hung limp, its head bobbing with each of her shallow breaths. Yesterday, this same lynx was just a shadow between the trees. I had spotted her near the edge of my yard, her ribs poking through her fur like bent branches under snow. She was watching me, cautious but desperate. I didn't think twice. I had leftover chicken in the fridge. I tossed a whole thigh towards the bushes, and she backed away at first, her eyes fixed on me, then crept forward, grabbed it, and disappeared into the undergrowth without a sound. And now, today, she stood at my door with her cub. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard it hurt. Her fur was matted near her chest, streaked with mud, and her ears flicked back and forth like antennae searching for a signal. She didn't growl. She didn't snarl. She just stood there, looking at me with an expression I never thought I would see in a wild animal. It was almost like she was asking. I stepped closer to the glass, barefoot on the cold wooden floor, feeling every splinter, every knot of wood under my heel. The cub let out a tiny squeak, barely audible. Its eyes were half open. Its breathing was fast and shallow. I whispered to myself, "What do you want from me, girl?" She shifted her paws, adjusted her grip on the cub, and bumped her head lightly against the door. I flinched. My mind raced with images of what could go wrong. What if she panicked and clawed at me? What if she dropped the cub and attacked to protect it? What if she just wanted to come inside to find warmth and tore up my entire living room in the process? But then I looked at the cub again. It was barely moving. I pressed my palm against the glass. She didn't back away. Her breath fogged up the window near the handle. I could see tiny scars across her nose, old fights with foxes or rival lynxes. She looked tired, broken almost. Yesterday, she trusted me enough to eat the food I threw her. Today, she trusted me enough to bring her baby. My chest felt tight. I took a deep breath and unlatched the sliding door, pulling it open just a few inches. A cold draft rushed in, carrying her wild, musky scent with it. She lowered her head, pushing the cub slightly forward through the gap, but didn't let go. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen behind me. The birds outside fell silent, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Slowly, I crouched down, my knees cracking from the sudden bend. I held out my hand, trembling. "Hey there. It's okay. I won't hurt you." She didn't move for a few seconds. Her eyes searched mine. Then, with a hesitant jerk, she released the cub onto the floor inside. It landed softly, too softly. Its tiny chest heaved, ribs showing through its spotted fur. She backed away, just a step, but kept staring. I looked down at the cub, then back at her. "Come in if you want." She flicked her ears again, sniffed the air near the door, but didn't enter. Instead, she turned her head towards the trees, then back to me, then the trees again. My brain felt like it was stuffed with cotton. What was she doing? Why bring it here? Did she know it wouldn't survive without help? The cub let out a thin mewl, weaker than before. My chest burned with urgency. I grabbed an old towel from the shelf near the door, wrapped its trembling body, and held it close to my chest. Its fur was damp and cold. Its paws were curled tight, claws barely poking out. She watched me the whole time, her tail flicking behind her in anxious, sharp movements. I didn't know what to do. Should I call animal control? A vet? Would they put it down? I held the cub tighter, feeling its faint heartbeat against my fingers. I took a step back into the house, keeping the door slightly open. She didn't move. "I'll help it. I promise." I don't know if she understood my words, but her shoulders dropped slightly, as if she sighed. Then, with a final look at me, she turned and disappeared down the porch steps into the trees, leaving me alone with her dying baby in my arms. I stood there for what felt like hours, holding the tiny cub wrapped in the towel. Its body was so light, so fragile, like if I squeezed too hard, it would break. I could still see the lynx just beyond the porch, her shadow between the trees, pacing back and forth, her ears flicking nervously. I didn't know what else to do. My mind screamed every warning I ever heard about wild animals: rabies, attacks, danger. But my gut told me something different. She trusted me yesterday with food. Today she trusted me with her baby. That meant something. I took a shaky breath and slid the door open wider. The cool morning air rushed in, carrying the smell of pine needles and damp earth. She froze when she heard the door move. Her muscles tensed, ready to bolt. But I stepped back into the kitchen, keeping the towel tight around the cub. I left the door open. It was like an unspoken invitation. She hesitated. Her paws shifted on the porch boards. Then she crept forward, step by step, her massive body moving silently. When she reached the doorframe, she paused, her nose twitching, eyes darting around the room. For a split second, I thought she would turn and run. But instead, she stepped inside. The floor creaked under her weight. Her tail flicked behind her, and she sniffed the air, scanning every corner. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe too loud. Her fur brushed against the edge of the couch as she walked towards the far corner of the living room. There, behind an old armchair, she turned in a tight circle, then padded back to me. She looked up at the cub in my arms. I lowered it gently onto a folded blanket on the couch. She nuzzled its tiny head, then turned and walked back to the open door. Without a sound, she disappeared into the trees. My hands were trembling so badly I had to sit down. The cub let out a weak squeak, its eyes rolling back for a moment before closing again. I didn't know if it was sleeping or losing strength. I stroked its tiny paw with my thumb, feeling the rough little pads under its fur. Half an hour passed. I sat there, staring at the door, feeling every minute stretch out like an hour. The wind picked up outside, rustling the birch leaves. The sun moved higher, spilling light across the wooden floor. Then I heard it, the faint sound of claws on wood. She was back. This time, she had another cub clamped gently between her jaws. My chest clenched. This one was slightly bigger, its fur thicker, eyes blinking slowly in the sunlight. She stepped through the door like she owned the place now, walked past me without even looking, and set the second cub down next to the first. It gave a tiny cough, then nestled against its sibling. She turned and stared at me. For a second, I almost laughed. The absurdity of it all. A wild lynx using my living room as a nursery. But fear still prickled under my skin. Her muscles rippled under her fur, and when she stretched her neck, I saw the thick tendons flex. If she wanted to, she could rip me apart before I even reached the door. I pulled my phone from my pocket, fingers fumbling with the screen. I scrolled to Lauren's number and hit call. She answered after 2 rings, her voice groggy with sleep. "Hey, what's up so early?" "Lauren," I whispered, trying not to alert the lynx. "You're not gonna believe this. Remember that lynx I told you about yesterday? The one I fed? Yeah, what about it? She just brought me her cubs. She's in my living room right now. With her babies." Silence on the line. Then a sharp inhale. "Are you kidding me, James? Are you inside with her right now?" "Yeah. She just brought in a second one. They're so small, Lauren. They're not gonna make it out there." She cursed under her breath. "Listen to me carefully. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't touch her. Don't try to push her out. Let her do what she's doing. I'll be there in 40 minutes. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay, hurry. James." Her voice softened. "You're doing the right thing. Stay calm." I hung up, my thumb shaking over the screen. The lynx was lying down now, curled protectively around her cubs on my old couch. Her eyes closed for a moment, and I saw her chest rising and falling, deep and slow. For the first time, I noticed how thin she really was. Her ribs pressed against her spotted fur with each breath. Her paws were caked with dried mud. Her tail twitched every few seconds, even in sleep. I didn't know how long she'd been trying to keep them alive out there. But whatever she needed from me, I knew I couldn't say no. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their tiny wheezing breaths, their weak squeaks. The lynx curled around them on the couch, her massive paws twitching as she dozed off, ears flicking at every sound outside. The clock ticked away the hours, each second hammering in my chest like a countdown I couldn't stop. Around 2 in the morning, she stood up suddenly. Her ears flattened for a moment, and she paced to the door, nose pressed against the crack. She turned to look at me, her eyes reflecting the dim kitchen light like liquid gold. Then she slipped out into the dark. I sat there, breathing hard, waiting. The cubs whimpered softly, curling tighter against each other on the blanket I'd laid out. I stroked their tiny backs with my fingertips, feeling each rib under their fur. They were so small, so impossibly fragile. Minutes dragged by. I checked the clock again. 2:30, then 2:40. I kept glancing at the door, afraid she wouldn't come back, afraid something happened to her out there. At 3, I heard it, the faintest sound of claws on the porch boards. She appeared in the doorway, and my breath caught in my throat. Hanging from her mouth was another cub. But this one, it wasn't moving. She stepped inside and set it down on the blanket next to its siblings. Its head lolled sideways, eyes closed, mouth half open. I reached out with trembling hands and touched its side. It was cold. No, no, no. I rubbed its chest gently with my fingers, feeling for any sign of breath. The lynx watched me, her tail flicking rapidly, her ears pinned back. I could see the desperation in her eyes. Her whiskers twitched as she leaned closer, nose bumping the cub's head. Come on, little one. I pressed my lips together, fighting tears. I'd never felt so helpless in my life. The rest of the night passed in a haze of worry and shallow breaths. I sat there on the floor next to the couch, my back against the coffee table, watching the lynx as she curled around all three of them. Every few minutes, she licked the newest cub's fur, grooming it, nudging it, willing it to move. By dawn, its breathing had started again. Barely there, but enough. When the first light broke over the pines, painting the room in pale gold, I heard tires crunching on the gravel outside. I scrambled up, my knees stiff and aching, and opened the door before she knocked. Lauren stood there, hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She carried a black vet bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. Her eyes widened as soon as she saw the lynx curled on my couch. Jesus, James, you weren't kidding. She stepped inside slowly, setting her bag on the table. The lynx raised her head, ears flattening, but Lauren lifted her hand calmly. Easy, mama. I'm just here to help your babies. She knelt next to the cubs, pulling on latex gloves, and began checking each one, lifting their tiny legs, prying their mouths open to check gums and tongues. She spoke quietly, her voice shaking with focus. They're dehydrated, severely underweight. This one, she touched the newest cub's chest gently. I don't know if it'll make it. The lynx let out a soft growl in her throat, but Lauren didn't flinch. She pulled a small syringe from her bag and filled it with a cloudy liquid. What is that? I whispered. Electrolytes. I'll just drip a little onto their tongues. It might help. She worked carefully, dropping tiny beads of liquid into each cub's mouth. The weakest one barely swallowed, its tiny chest fluttering like a trapped bird's wings. I sat there, feeling the floor tilt under me, my pulse pounding in my temples. Lauren wiped sweat from her forehead with her sleeve and glanced at me. James, you have to prepare yourself. They're wild animals. They might not survive this. I know, but I couldn't let them die without trying. The lynx never took her eyes off Lauren. When she finished, she sat back on her heels and sighed. They need warmth, quiet, and food. She looked at the lynx, then back at me. And she needs rest. She's starving, James. I nodded, swallowing hard. Lauren packed up her things, leaving behind a few syringes and small vials of electrolyte solution. Call me if anything changes. I'll check in tomorrow. After she left, the lynx lay her head down on the blanket, curling tighter around her cubs. Her eyes fluttered shut, exhausted. I sat beside her, leaning against the couch, feeling the heat from her body radiate into my side. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for sure. My life wasn't going to be the same after this. The morning passed in heavy silence. The lynx lay curled around her cubs, barely moving except to nudge them closer to her belly. The smallest one still wasn't breathing right. Every few minutes it let out a thin, raspy squeak, and my chest tightened each time. I paced the kitchen, reheating coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. I kept glancing out the window, half expecting Lauren to come back early. Instead, I saw Travis. He was walking up my driveway, wearing his usual stained work overalls, a trucker hat pulled low over his forehead. His hunting rifle was slung casually over his shoulder. My stomach dropped. I stepped out onto the porch before he could reach the door. Morning, James, he said, squinting past me into the house. Heard you got yourself a little visitor in there. Travis, just stay back, okay? He shook his head, clucking his tongue. You know you can't keep a wild cat in your house, right? Especially one with babies. That's dangerous. They'll send animal control to put her down if she attacks anyone. She hasn't attacked anyone. She's just trying to survive. He adjusted his grip on the rifle strap. Look, man, I get it. You're soft-hearted. Always have been. But this is a predator. Next thing you know, she'll be prowling around my chickens, or worse, my kids. Anger surged up in me like wildfire. She's not hurting anyone. I snapped, louder than I intended. She brought me her babies because she had nowhere else to go. She's starving, Travis. They're dying. His eyes narrowed. Not my problem. I'm calling wildlife services. They'll take care of it. He turned to walk back down the steps, but I moved in front of him, blocking his path. Don't you dare call them. Please. If they come out here, they'll tranquilize her, maybe euthanize her. They'll separate the cubs. Just let me handle this. For a second, I thought he might shove me aside. His jaw worked under his beard, eyes locked on mine. The wind picked up around us, rustling the pine branches overhead. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, heavy with rain. Finally, he snorted. You're out of your damn mind, James. But fine, do what you want. Just don't call me when she tears your arm off. He stomped down the driveway, muttering to himself. I stood there shaking, my fists clenched at my sides. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and deep. I turned back inside. The lynx lifted her head, ears swiveling towards me. The cubs were huddled together, but the smallest one, it wasn't moving. No. I rushed to the couch, dropping to my knees beside them. Its tiny chest wasn't rising. Its mouth hung open, limp. My vision blurred with tears. No, 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 no. I scooped it up gently, cradling it in my palms. The lynx let out a low, guttural sound from her throat. Desperation, fear, grief. I grabbed my phone with one hand, dialing Lauren so fast my fingers slipped on the screen. She picked up on the second ring. James. Lauren, it's not breathing. The smallest one, it's not. I heard her curse under her breath. Okay, listen to me. Do you have a clean towel? Something soft? Yeah. Wrap it up. Hold its head back gently. Blow small breaths into its mouth and nose. Not too hard, just enough to see its chest rise. I did as she said, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I pressed my lips over its tiny muzzle and blew the smallest puff of air I could manage. Its chest rose. Fell. Nothing. Again. Come on, little one. Tears streamed down my face, dripping onto its damp fur. The lynx climbed off the couch and pressed her nose against my arm, whining deep in her chest. Then, suddenly, its ribs expanded on their own. It let out a tiny, rasping cough. I sobbed with relief, clutching it against my chest. Lauren's voice crackled in my ear. Is it breathing? Yeah, it is. Good. Keep it warm. I'm coming over now. She hung up. Outside, lightning split the sky in jagged white lines. Thunder boomed so loud it rattled the windows. Rain pounded the roof in heavy sheets. I sat there on the floor, the lynx beside me, her head resting against my shoulder, while the storm raged around us. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the storm. Morning came slowly, gray and cold after the storm. The ground outside was slick with rain, puddles reflecting the pale sky. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the lynx and her cubs. They were all asleep now, curled together in a tight, spotted ball on the blanket. Lauren had left just before dawn, exhausted but relieved. She told me the cubs were stable for now. Their chances were still slim, but at least they had a fighting shot. Before leaving, she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. James, she said quietly, you've done everything you could. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. Around mid-morning, the lynx stirred. She lifted her head, sniffing the air near the open window. Sunlight streamed through the glass, warming the floorboards. She stood slowly, stretching each leg, her claws digging into the worn rug. Then she bent down and picked up her smallest cub in her jaws. My chest tightened. Where are you going, girl? I whispered. She turned to look at me, her eyes calm but determined. Without a sound, she padded to the door. I watched her silhouette disappear down the steps into the dripping yard, the cub swinging gently from her mouth. I wanted to run after her, to beg her to stay, but I didn't move. She returned 10 minutes later. This time, she took the second cub. The stronger one let out a tiny protest squeak, but she lifted it easily and carried it out the door. My heart pounded with every minute that passed. Outside, the breeze rustled the wet leaves, and the smell of pine and damp earth drifted through the open windows. Finally, she came back for the last cub. She paused in front of me, the cub clamped gently in her jaws, and for a moment, she just stood there, her golden eyes locked onto mine. I felt something pass between us then, something I didn't have words for. Gratitude, trust, understanding. Take care of them, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please. She blinked slowly, then turned and padded out into the yard. I watched her move across the grass, her fur catching the morning light, her muscles rippling under her spotted coat. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty blanket on the couch. The house felt impossibly silent. The clock ticked on the wall. A drip fell from the roof outside. After a while, I made myself a mug of coffee and stepped out onto the porch. The boards were damp under my bare feet. I sat down on the top step, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic. The forest lay quiet before me, steaming slightly under the rising sun. Birds flitted between the branches, shaking off droplets of rain. I scanned the tree line, my eyes searching for any sign of her. And then I saw her. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, half hidden among the ferns. All 3 cubs clustered around her feet, tumbling and pushing at each other weakly. She turned her head towards me, just for a moment. I raised my hand in a small wave, not sure why. She didn't move, didn't run. She just watched me, her tail flicking once. Then she turned and disappeared into the shadows of the trees, her cubs stumbling after her. I sat there long after they were gone, listening to the wind in the pines, feeling the cool air brush against my face. I thought about everything that had happened these past 2 days. How a wild animal had trusted me enough to bring me her babies. How I had felt fear and anger and hope, all twisted together until I couldn't tell one from the other. I set my coffee cup down on the porch rail and rubbed my hands over my face. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, like something heavy had been lifted off my chest. I didn't know if those cubs would survive the week. Nature was cruel like that. But I knew one thing for certain. Sometimes, doing the right thing doesn't come with rewards. No thank you. No recognition. Just the quiet knowledge that you made a choice to help, because it was the right thing to do. And somehow that was enough.